Hi everybody, I hope you're all doing really well. I'm back today to do my BookTube rewind for June. This is where I go through all of my BookTube watching and give you some recommendations of videos, video trends, different creators that I've really been enjoying in the month of June. I feel like June has been a lovely celebratory month, and that's what I hope is reflected in these recommendations. So without much further ado, let's just get straight into talking about these great BookTube videos and BookTube creators. Firstly, in terms of BookTube videos that I've really enjoyed, Gareth over at Book Songs and Other Magic did this really lovely touching tribute to Alice from Alice and the Giant Bookshelf. June had a readathon, which was Joy Reading June, which was a readathon that was originally created by Alice, but unfortunately she passed away last year before she was able to actually do the readathon itself, and a bunch of lovely booktubers have gotten together to continue this readathon in her honour. And as part of this readathon, Gareth got in touch with a bunch of booktubers, myself included, and we all had to give a recommendation of a book that gives us great joy. And there were so many wonderful booktubers who took part in this video, some fantastic recommendations, and once again a really lovely tribute to Alice. Of course, June is Pride Month and I saw a lot of great Pride recommendations, but one that I particularly enjoyed, I really loved getting the recommendations for and all the very different genres, was Leanne over at Leanne Rose, who did recommendations for bisexual books, from The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo all the way through to Heartstopper. June marked 10 years of Katie over at Books and Things channel, and once again there were a bunch of videos, a bunch of lovely celebrations. I was really honoured to be invited to take part in one of her 10-year anniversary live streams, which I'll link down below, but also Charlie over at Charlie Book Reads invited myself and a bunch of other booktubers to create a video sending clips where we are just shouting out Katie and what her channel has meant to us. I've mentioned previously that it was actually one of Katie's behind the scenes booktube videos that actually gave me the motivation and the courage to start making videos, because one of the big things I always worried about was the fact that I'm not a very fluent talker, that I knew that if I was ever going to do a booktube I was going to have to do a lot of editing, and does it even really count if I can't string my sentences together like some of the other booktubers who I know can just sit down for 30 minutes, not have to do any editing at all? Isn't it kind of ridiculous that I am wanting to do this when I constantly lose my train of thought, when I constantly stumble over words? Like, what do I have to offer? And Katie's video was just so reassuring that within a couple of days I sat myself down, I filmed a couple of videos and I ended up uploading them. And so I have a lot to be grateful for when it comes to Katie and her wonderful channel, and so I wanted to do my part to celebrate that. I've mentioned previously that I am trying to get more into poetry and plays, short stories, essays, and so I was delighted to see a video by Aaron Facer called So You're Thinking of Getting Into Poetry, which was just a really fantastic primer in this genre. I definitely recommend if you yourself are a poetry beginner and just wanting to get some tips and tricks. Samantha over at Thoughts on Tomes did a great video, and I think it's part of a series, or at least a couple of videos that she has done, about the decline of developmental editing, and her contention that the reason that a lot of contemporary books are so bad in quality is because editors are not prioritised, and particularly developmental editing is on the decline. As somebody who works more from the publicity side of publishing, this was a really interesting argument and insight. It's something I don't spend a lot of my working day thinking about, but definitely something to keep your eye out for. Page Turners with Katya did this really eye-opening, informative video on what we lose when we defund international literature, which I think was particularly timely with the announcement of the winner of the International Booker Prize. You know, every year BookTube comes together to talk about translated literature, but I think this video goes to show that we really do need to think about this all year round, not just for an isolated 2 or 3 months of the year when the Booker Prize is in action. And then finally, a video I know that is going to resonate with a lot of people, especially if, like me, you like to know about different BookTube events that are going on, but always wondering how you can make your TBR fit, or just generally make your reading fit alongside them, is a video from Gareth over at Book Songs and Other Magic called Juggling Book Events with Personal Reading Goals. I know I definitely do not get the balance right, and more often than not when it comes to prioritising book events or BookTube events over personal reading goals, I typically will tend to go towards my personal reading goals, though I know that's not the case for everybody, but as a result that means that I am less involved and active within the BookTube community, and I do feel bad about that. But with so many books to read and so little time, you do have to make choices here and there, and I think this video really encompassed that. As I've mentioned previously, a video trend that I had noticed was definitely on the book prize side of things, with both the Women's Prize for Fiction and Non-Fiction being announced, as well as the Walter Scott Prize for Historical Fiction. These two book prizes, which have been buzzing around for the past 3 months, have finally made their announcements on their winners, and I was really enjoying seeing lots of people's predictions as well as their reactions to the winners who were chosen. In terms of new or popular tags for this month, June saw the Would You Rather book tag created by Ellen Made Book Club and Curious Cat. I believe they have 2 separate parts on each of their channels, and it's a very, very simple concept. You are given a string of questions where you are having to choose between one or the other bookish scenario. The Muppet book tag created by Gareth, again at Book Songs and Other Magic. I'm really surprised if we haven't yet had a Muppet book tag. That seems like a very, very fun tag that should exist already, but as you can imagine, questions that are prompted by the different Muppets characters. Gavin over at Genre Books created the Sod's Law or Murphy's Law tag, depending on what side of the pond you originate from. And it's questions that are all to do with that idiom of if something can go wrong, it will. And this just poses different bookish scenarios based around Sod's Law. For example, a video that had the most disasters while you were making it, videos that you made and put a lot of effort to but ended up with the least views, all those kinds of things that can just leave you scratching your head and thinking, why me? And then finally, Robert G. Reader of Books created the Music to Read by or Not tag, which is all about whether or not you listen to music while you read. Is that something that you can do and it doesn't distract you, or do you need to have complete and utter silence? And yes, all about your relationship to music and reading. In terms of BookTube events coming up in July, we have an abundance as always. Of course, my favourite July BookTube event is Jane Austen July, hosted by Katie from Books and Things, Claudia at Spinster's Library, and Marissa over at Blatantly Bookish, celebrating all things Jane Austen, encouraging you to read Jane Austen's books, watch adaptations, read non-fiction, anything that is to do with Jane Austen counts for this. There is the Private Eye in July Readathon, hosted by a bunch of lovely booktubers who I'll link down below, which, as you can imagine from that title, is all about reading fiction to do with detectives or private eyes. There is the Tarot Readathon, once again hosted by a bunch of lovely booktubers who I'll link down below. This is a competitive team-based readathon in which you are using tarot cards to choose what you are reading. There is the Journeyathon hosted by Chatty over at Chatty the Mad Chatter, which is a middle grade readathon. There is Ketchupathon hosted by Amy's Bookish Life, Desi Reads and Books and Jams, which is all about catching up on your Book of the Month books. Another bigger BookTube event is Rocket Summer, which is all about reading science fiction. The Australian Readathon hosted by a book fiend named Mel, Novelty Corner, The Reading Wren and Bin Chickens Books, which, as you can imagine, is about reading Australian books. The Ktropeathon hosted by Beautiful Minushai and Christy Lewis Dostoevsky in Space, which is a readathon all based around Korean culture and entertainment. Finally, there is the Summer Reading Challenge hosted by What Victoria Read, in which she has this wonderful little book grid, and all of the prompts on said grid are inspired by different booktubers, and you fit your reading against those prompts. I was really, really honoured that Victoria ended up including me, and the prompt for me is, as you might be able to imagine, historical fiction. I was really pretty proud when I saw that was my prompt. So there we go, loads of lovely BookTube events to get stuck into for July. Do let me know about any that you're going to take part in, and please let me know about any BookTube videos that you watched in June and really recommend me watch that I haven't mentioned already. I would love to hear from you. I hope you're having a fantastic, fantastic day, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks. Bye.